Muscle Rock. Then the weather kind of changed for a while, for a couple days. It got a little foggy and rainy, which happens even in Greenland, though this is an Arctic desert with only 3 or 4 inches of precipitation per year. So when it rains there, it's fairly unusual. But it does, every trip I've been on, it rains a little. And this was our day of rain. And after the rain stopped, we took off. We packed up all our gear, including our fishing rod, you see sticking out of the front of my kayak. And so much humidity in the air, it was condensing, so it's really foggy coming off the mountains. It made for pretty conditions for taking photos. The sun is trying to peek out, and at the same time, the clouds are rolling through the hills. Those cliffs are probably 1,000 feet high. There's Russ. We have kayaks in place in Umanak. They've been there for about 10 years. They're plastic current designs boats, tandems and solos. They're really nice boats for this kind of paddling. Hold a lot of gear. Easy to, very comfortable, easy to paddle. Sara was fairly new to ocean kayaking a little bit, huh? And was great. We were all amazed at how everybody was able to paddle so well and keep up. One of our campsites, the second campsite we had was on a long spit of sand, which I've never camped at. We're a little worried about water there, but behind the campsite there's some bogs. It really looked like bogs around here with cotton grass and deep holes in the middle where you could find some drinking water. That's our site on the big long sand.
We also met the iceberg.
Yeah, did we? You met some ice there? Yeah. Yeah. At the end of the spit, there's actually a little fisherman's cabin. And apparently a family dwelling over the years. We hiked up there and saw this cairn, which was built at some point, who knows when and for what. But looking around a little further in that whole area, we found this, which is actually a burial site. And if you look inside, hold the camera inside, it's Uncle Marty and Aunt Mary, and I don't know who they were, but this is the family burial site. And you know, there's no way you can bury, it's pretty hard to have a cemetery without a backhoe in this area, so they just put people in crypts on top of the land. That's the fishing shack. There were some people there off and on, and they were collecting capelin. They dried them outside on a tarp and then brought them inside and displayed them for our enjoyment, both you know, olfactory wise. Yeah, they were pretty pungent. I think they used these to feed their dogs, but there's a lot of them. We were since we had rain, we had mushrooms, and they're all bowl leaves, they're sponge bottom mushrooms, so they're all edible, and we had mushrooms probably almost every night as part of our fare. It's a little day trip. Everybody got a chance to get their photo taken in front of a gigantic iceberg that had tilted. You see the streaking, the striations in that iceberg? That's because it was partly underwater. It was underwater, and then it tipped, it changed its density on one side, lost some ice, and it tilted. The icebergs are always changing. They're always exploding. There's gases trapped within the ice from who knows how many hundreds or thousands of years ago. And as it gets warmer, it expands, and a chunk of the iceberg will literally blow off the iceberg. And it sounds like a gun going off. Now, the first time I was there, I thought people were duck hunting, to tell you the truth. It's one of the spots where we collected water on our little day trip. And I just want to point out one other thing. The water here looks milky because it's an ice fjord. At the end of this fjord, particular fjord, there is a calving glacier. So all that rock flour that's been ground up for thousands of years underneath the glacier is pushed out into the water, and it stays suspended for a long time. One of the major species is Glocken's gulls, really big, all white gulls, and European or great cormorants were nesting there. There's our team coming back from our day paddle and checking out the icebergs here as sun starts to get lower in the sky. Great for photography. I brought my camera because people always ask what kind of camera you use on. And so if you want to see that, it's just a Canon digital camera. And this was kind of my favorite evening as the sun was heading towards midnight. This is almost at midnight. One of our tents. a couple from the cities. We happen to have a pediatrician on this trip who studies sleep disorders in children. Could do us any good. None of us would sleep anyway with the sun out. It's hard to sleep with the sun shining in your tent at 2 in the morning and your tent starts to warm up to about 40, 50, 60, 70 degrees. That cliff, beautiful geology there. It's all metamorphic geology. There's that little fishing hut. Breeze through some of these. That cliff, kind of famous because it has a recumbent fold. If you look back in here, metamorphic geology has created this, what is a fold in the rock, but it folds back on itself. So it's called a recumbent fold, which is pretty unusual. This is taken off with all of our gear. Mary Shedd brought a sleeping bag that was so big she never wanted to be cold. Couldn't fit it through the hatch. So it's tied to the top. And there's several freshwater lakes. One at this campsite, our third campsite along the way, where Chuck was fishing for char. No luck. But there are Arctic char in these lakes. So we ended up with peanut butter pasta. Gato. Sarah chopping up cabbage. I'll tell you what, cabbages last a long time on trips like this. 12 days. Our cleanup crew. Ready for a big hike. We're going to try to hike 7 or 8 miles up to the ice cap, but we were thwarted by one of these lakes with about a 1,000-foot cliff on one side that you just couldn't negotiate around. We tried. We got as far as this ice cap. That's all the ice cap we saw. And we reveled in it. But we did spot this polar bear on that hike. There are no polar bears in Uminat. Occasionally they drift down on icebergs from higher up in the Arctic, but they don't get past the mouth of Uminat Harbor because the locals spot them and they shoot them. So that's the one nice thing about this trip. You don't have to worry about polar bears or my favorite totem, the walrus. No walrus either. Incredible hiking though, just unbelievable, easy walking basically for the most part. Over open rocks. That's our campsite at the mouth of that little creek where the char lake is. Picking off towards our fourth and final campsite. One little day rest along the way. Everybody's all dressed up in their PFDs, and some people wearing their spray jackets. Although it's probably 55 degrees here and feels pretty darn warm. Taking a nap at one of our lunch spots. And then the final 3 miles of this particular day is along a cliff that's probably about 1,500 feet high, so there's no landing spots in that area. We made one final pit stop and then took off for that last 3 miles. There's the cliff. Yeah, this first place we saw fin whales. Fin whales are the most common whales here, the second largest whale in the world. And occasionally they get close. On our trip, unfortunately, they were a mile or 2 away. You can hear them blow. You hear this blowing sound, and it's kind of in the back of your mind, something's weird, and then you hear it again, and then you go, it's a whale! And we saw them with binoculars, unfortunately. I've had them come up and swim around my kayak before, but not on this trip. That's Sarah. There's Sarah's silhouette, and Steve and Mary in the tandem. And just, late in the day, the photography is so incredible. This is probably 5 in the afternoon, something like that. One of the seabirds is tiny little alcids called black guillemot. They're probably the size of, double the size of a robin. And they have red feet, which is kind of a cool thing about guillemot. There's that recumbent fold again, which is so unusual.